When you're older, you can talk about your work and not sound too cocky. Like, I look at the Calvin Klein pictures, and what I look in them is that I knew every single one of those people really well. And I just adored them. And I kind of recorded their youth in a way.
Hello and welcome back to the third act. I'm Catherine Fairweather, thrilled to introduce for this episode legendary American fashion photographer and filmmaker Bruce Weber. Over drinks and the sound of clinking ice at Auriens, I meet up with Bruce en route to his first major retrospective in Prague. Renowned for his provocative and glamorous campaigns for Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein in the 80s and 90s, he muses on a show that celebrates the unique relationships he forged with his favourite subjects, from the late Stella Tennant, of whom he was in awe, to Kate Moss and countless others. We chat about how lucky we were to experience the glory days of print journalism and the unlucky ways in which 9/11 really was the end of an era. Wait for the recital of a favourite poem to live by at the end. I was just having a little look at going back over your amazing images to remind myself. And they're now, of course, going to be all brought together. I think there are 400 or 300 images in this retrospective.
Yeah, probably too many, yeah.
So this is your first retrospective, right?
It's sort of not a retrospective in the purest form. I mean, it's kind of just kind of showing people a little bit about the crazy life and fun life I had, you know what I mean? And there's a wonderful thing, I think, not so much my pictures, but Stella Tennant. I was a good friend of Stella's.
Yeah.
And she's no longer here to see this.
Yeah.
And I photographed her for so many years. I really photographed her from the start when she started modeling, especially in America. And so there's tons of photographs.
I was just with her sister a month ago talking about her, so she is on my mind at the moment.
Stella, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible person. Intelligent and just hard worker. We were in South America and we were at this club and it was her and another girl. And I said, Stella, we're going to be here till the sun comes up. You're going to go to the ladies' room here at the club, and every time we finish a dance, you're going to change your clothes so it looks like you're a party girl and you're out every night. That is so not Stella. I cannot tell you, And she's like, I'll never go out. I don't know if I can dance, Anyway, sun came up and she never stopped. And when I got outside, all of a sudden I feel a tap on my shoulder and it's Stella. She said, Bruce, I'm sorry to bother you, but I have to go back to the hotel. I'm so tired. She said, and by the way, I'm pregnant.
Oh, my goodness. So she just carried on.
And I said, are you out of your mind? I said, how could you do that? I would have never made you dance all night, but you would have never known by the pictures.
Yeah, she was a trooper.
Totally.
Yeah. But, I mean, the collaborative thing is pretty important in your work, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so, especially in my films, too. I've had a lot of the same crew. They're like my family. We've traveled together. We've been together a long time,
So, but you were saying that when you started doing the film on Paolo Di Paolo, you didn't like him.
No.
So if so much of your work is collaborative, what do you do if you don't like someone initially?
Well, I think you have to find something about them that you admire. And we didn't know which way we were going to go or what we were going to do. That's what I love making about documentaries. You can change your mind. It's sort of, I guess, a little bit like being a writer or journalist, where you can do a different turn in the story. But the more I saw his photographs, the more I really started to like him. He came from such poor beginnings, and he loved the glamour that Rome was at that time, and he was so accepted. And he was a cool-looking guy. He had a nice sports car, and he took beautiful pictures. And I don't know, I just got fond of him, But walking down the street the first time, he was 92, I think, when I met him. He was like yards ahead of us walking,
He was 98 when he died, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I thought that I would probably pass away before him.
When you look back at this great spread of images across the decades at this retrospective, they seem to me to be all the link between these different worlds is this extraordinary sort of sense of energy that comes through the playfulness and the sort of joy of being alive. I'm sure that's not conscious when you're doing it, but that sense of playfulness, was it a factor of you were younger then, or was it an era that was the optimistic era of the 80s and the 90s mostly? Or is it just in you?
That's a good question. I think that I was set free, from my parents. You got to understand, my parents were the kind of people, they would come to New York City where I was going to NYU Film School. And I'd say, okay, now on Tuesday, you'll be here Tuesday, so Tuesday night we'll do this, and Wednesday we'll go to the theater. I was planning the whole week. And they said, Bruce, we don't even know if we're going to be able to have time to see you. They were so independent. So I was kind of set free from them. And I had a lot to learn, I had sort of a very sheltered life, And I was kind of nerdy, I was kind of like, very shy.
Country boy.
Yeah, sort of, yeah. But also my head was somewhere else, because I would read all my mom's magazines. Even then, when in Pennsylvania, everybody has like football stars on their wall. I had pictures of Elizabeth Taylor because I was completely obsessed about her. And so much so that my dad wanted me to go to see a psychiatrist about it.
Really?
Well, because I called her, she was in Las Vegas during that period when she was married to Eddie Fisher. And when I got to know Elizabeth years later, I was talking to her about it because she's probably the only guy in her life that they weren't friends anymore after they kind of split.
Did you tell her you were obsessed by her?
God, no. I know better than that. But I think she knew it, because I would write things to her or say things. And so...
And she didn't disappoint you when you met her?
Not at all, no.
She was extraordinary, was she?
She was funny and bawdy. I mean, one minute she was like the royal family, and the next minute she was like a truck driver. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she was really giving.
She had a big heart.
Big heart, big heart. We'd always talked about making a film together because we both knew Johnny Depp pretty well, and we were thinking of having all these young male actors come over to her place and then them talking about sex. And who knows more about that than Elizabeth, right?
Probably Johnny Depp too, yeah.
Right, exactly, right, So we just thought it'd be funny to make
that would have been great.
I know.
Could one make a film like that now, or are times say different, do you think?
Oh, God, no.
Yeah.
No, because people were so open and they had such a sense of humor. I think that because I was such a shy kid growing up, I really tend to really like those men and women and animals that are sort of problematic, maybe,
Because animals are a big signifier, Bruce Weber signifier. You love animals, obviously.
Yes.
They're often in your imagery, and it's a wonderful device because it also opens people up, doesn't it? So that you get the essence of them as they interact with their pets.
Well, it's so wonderful when you see people responding to their dogs or cats or whatever, and you see people responding to their children like that. That's why I always love like a baby in a picture or having a kid in the background or something.
You're not the first photographer ever to put animals in pictures, I know, but it became such a sort of trademark Weber thing.
Well, a lot of designers wouldn't let me at first.
No.
They didn't, thought it would take away from the girl or the guy, especially the clothes. I have to say Ralph was really amazing like that because he really likes dogs a lot. And he was the one who sensed that was a nice thing to do, just the human nature of it.
But my favourite one of images that remind me where it is, I think maybe it's in Rio, and I can't remember who it is, but somebody's throwing their dog up.
Oh, you're talking about Patrick Swayze.
And Patrick Swayze.
He was throwing his dog up in the air, yeah.
And then my other favourite image is Pedro Almodovar with his mop of hair and the cat.
Yeah, right.
And they both got exactly the same face, expression on their face.
I know.
Wide faces.
I know.
Wonderful wide round faces looking cat-like at the camera.
Yeah.
Love that picture.
He's a sweetheart. I really like him too.
You can sort of see he's a sweetheart from that
good.
portrait.
I hope so.
And it made me want to meet him.
Yeah. He's lovely. We've had so many great times together. I was able to introduce him to American films that he had never seen, and he was doing vice versa with like a lot of Spanish and early Italian films,
So what are the different talents, do you think? Making films and taking a photograph, what's the difference, and why do you enjoy both?
Well, I've been looking at a lot of reels recently and listening to music, because music was always a big part of my life. And when I was growing up, I was really thinking, well, if nobody likes my photographs, I could be a disc jockey, on a jazz station in California and be like Clint Eastwood and play Misty for me. But that never happened. So, but I kind of love, I was on the Frank Sinatra station once talking about Frank and the music and all that kind of stuff like that. And it was fun for me to choose these songs, And so I chose songs that were sort of break up and make up kind of songs, because his music's so much about making up after a huge breakup.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you what you would have done that sliding doors moment if you hadn't been a photographer, and you've just answered it, actually. But I mean, I think in the film, the Paolo di Paolo, back to him again, that you can't believe that this man who was so talented and so wedded to his photography gives it up. And I think in the film you say, I could never do that, because for you it's like breathing, you say.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I don't know how he did it. It was always a thing that, photography was so different for him as it was for me and for the kids doing it now, And I feel so lucky that I got to work at that time.
Yes.
It was such a golden era.
What was the defining thing about those wonderful decades of magazine journalism and photography? What's the why is it so different now? Is it digital? Is it about digital photography?
It's a little bit about that, I mean, you had this uniform thing where you took pictures and then they were developed, and it was like waiting for Christmas, whether you get a pen and pencil set or you would, just get the most gorgeously intimate gift. And then you would make your prints and then go and see the people at the magazine. You can't even send a print to somebody at a magazine anymore,
Wow.
They wouldn't know what to do with it. You know what I mean,
Yeah, that's right.
And I miss that kind of communication.
Yeah. Time.
Yeah.
To brainstorm and collaborate and feed each other ideas and talk about books and go out for lunch.
And also sometimes in that way, I was working with this really extraordinary art director, Bea Feitler, on a portrait of Dee Dee Allen, the great film editor, of photographing her. And I came away and I went, I don't know if I even took a picture, So I showed it to Bea. She said, well, what do you think of these? And I said, I'm not so happy about them. She said, well, go back.
Did she?
Called, yeah. And I went back. But you couldn't even do that today because most people are so busy, It was nice. You had a communication with the art directors, the head editors, I just saw David Bailey yesterday.
Did you?
Yeah.
You went to see him?
Yeah. No, I had lunch with him and Catherine.
Did you?
And one of his kids. He's great. He's still a young soul, He's doing a lot of interesting things still. And he has that curiosity, And I keep seeing him. We were at a restaurant that used to be the restaurant Caprice with all his photographs. So this place called the Arlington has all those same pictures plus some new ones up on the wall. And I said, David, what do you think about this whole room filled with your photographs? And he said something so typical. He said, I don't really even know any of them.
You just said as we were walking in that you actually don't like having exhibitions. Is that because you've been made to look at photographs that you took such a long time ago? There's almost a sort of disconnect between the you then or the time then and the you now. Is that why you don't like?
I sort of don't like the process of it, but it was easier for me on this exhibition because I decided that I wanted to be able to walk through the exhibition and think about it years later and knowing that I had made a record of people I cared about, or I felt that I was proud to know. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that everybody I photographed was such an incredible person as human nature, but I really had a good experience with them, and I learned something from them. You know what I mean?
It's organized thematically, isn't it? Fashion, movement.
Yes. Yeah.
Is there a section or series that you feel really proud of in the exhibition or in your work generally, actually, like your campaigns for Calvin Klein and Ralph Lauren? And when you look back on your work, do you think, God, I did that? That's incredible, I did that.
Well, it's funny you saying that, Catherine, because my mom wasn't alive, but when all the Calvin stuff started coming out, my dad, with his new girlfriend, was going to the theater that night. They were in New York. And I said, hey, Dad, when you're walking through Times Square, look up, you'll see 5 of my Calvin Klein billboards all over the place. You're going to start laughing. This would be...
Stop the traffic, I remember.
And so the next day, he never said anything to me. So later that day, I said, Dad, I forgot to ask you, did you go through Times Square to get to the theater? He said, yeah. He said, it's about time you got serious.
Nothing like your parents for bringing you down to earth, is
exactly.
there? But yeah, and that was the era of traffic stopping billboards of the men in the...
Yeah, I mean...
The eroticized men.
I'm really proud of a lot of my work because I want to be, and I know it's the right thing. But I really feel sometimes that it just wasn't me. I think the photographs that really got me out of myself a lot, It's easy to look at a beautiful woman or beautiful man and kind of take a portrait of them.
Yes.
But, we got involved, me and kind of a team. We do this kind of a book every year. We've done it now. We're on our 24th year, All-American Journal. And we got to go to Richmond, Virginia, where there's a program for the men who are prisoners to be able to have one day where they have a dance with their daughters.
How lovely.
Yeah, it was really an amazing experience. I mean, it was really rough at times, but it's just it made me feel like I just got out of myself so much so, and that world of fashion that I knew.
Yes.
And all these people giving you a lot of attention. Nobody cared less for who I was or what I did, there. And we especially focused on one little girl and her father, but ended up focusing on everybody in this group, They give them nice suits to wear so their daughters see them.
Yes, I'm really fascinated by this All-American Journal. You started it after 9/11, didn't you? Because if I'm right in saying, you felt that you were looking back at the past and it seemed like a different world.
Totally.
Yeah.
I went down there to 9/11, and I was carrying some dog food for some of the dogs who were rescuing and looking for finding bodies and things. And that's the only way you could kind of get in. Mm. And I had a nice plowbill camera that I kind of folded up and put in my parka and stuff. And they would stop you and they'd say, do you have a camera? And I go, no, I just have dog food. And I got so taken by this mass of steel and destruction and what it had brought. And I mean, literally, I came closer than we're sitting next to each other. I totally forgot where I was. And they had to pull me back. And I don't know, I think that the more you can get out into the world, I mean, I came back from some of these experiences and there I was working for Vogue, and loving it the same, but differently, I don't look, some photographers don't like to look at their advertising work. Dick used to photograph me when I was a kid, and he became a friend years later, because I had to photograph him. It was right before he died. And he'd always talk about that because he liked his Western series and he liked all these important pictures that he had done, like political things. And those fashion pictures that he took for fun with Susie Parker and Gardner McKay in the collections were just as important to him, I feel, than those amazing portraits that he had done. I feel that about my own work, When you're older, you can talk about your work and not sound too cocky. I'm like the first person who's going to say, well, I don't know if that's such a great picture. Like, you know, I look at the Calvin Klein pictures, and what I look in them is that I knew every single one of those people really well. And I just adored them. And I'm still friendly with them. And they're a part of my life, a lot of those people. And I kind of recorded their youth in a way. You know, that was sort of nice.
And that yes, and there's that element in all your work of everything being like your sort of family album, photograph album, your scrapbook, even in the commercial work, because there's that connection with the model.
Right.
That's what makes you different, I think.
Well, I take that as a compliment. I mean, I was always different as a kid, so I still like being different as a person this age.
Yep.
I mean, you know, I met, you know, Kate Moss, you know, when she first came to America.
Yeah, I love your pictures of Kate Moss.
Thank you.
You really captured her well, didn't you?
And I just liked her so much, you know, and I took her on trips with me. She was the best person to travel with. One time we were in Spain together, and I said, Kate, take off your shoes. I want you to walk around the streets barefoot. She had on just like a pair of pants and just a little T-shirt. And I said, I want you just to walk up to as many people as you can and talk to them, and I'm going to take your picture. And she must have talked to about 20 people on that walk. She is so good with people and so sincerely interested in them. You know, that's what I always loved about Kate, you know. I mean, and she's brave, man. She's really brave.
And she's clever as well, because she's kept her private life private.
Exactly.
And she doesn't really go around talking to everybody. So there's a mystique to her still.
I mean, can you imagine, as an American, I took Kate on a trip for American Vogue to Vietnam. That was really heavy for me. I was just tormented. I was up at nights thinking about it. And so I found this book by Christina Noble. The Kennedy family really helped her set up this orphanage there in Vietnam. And I said, we're all going to go there. So here I'm dragging my whole team from Vogue to this orphanage, right? And I had to have a reason to be there physically, mentally, emotionally. And I thought, I want to see Kate in that situation. Of course, Kate with kids is like perfect way. And we started there. We never ran any of the pictures. I mean, I would have run them, but they weren't chosen. But it was a way for us to have a reason, because we could see the joy and that sense of trying to understand this terrible, terrible war where we lost so many friends and people. It was just terrible. And then to know that when the soldiers came back to America, people turned their backs on them. It was really a terrible time in America.
On the soldiers. Yeah.
You know, people always said that American people were really lucky that they never had a war. There was never a war there. And I think that the 9/11 really changed that for everybody, you know.
So did you see it as a loss of innocence then?
Yes, definitely.
So the all-American, was it a way of trying to turn a lens more on what was happening in America? Or was it wasn't that political, was it?
No. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. You know, we did 2 issues about the soldiers. And, you know, we really got really involved with their families and everything, you know. And I could see, too, how the government really treated the soldiers really badly, you know.
And you covered a lot of eclectic subjects and
yes,
writing talent, didn't you? I mean, you're still producing this.
Yes, we are, yeah.
And how long is that? And that must take a huge amount of time out of your year, doesn't it?
The day that it comes out, when it finally gets to bookstores, we're always late. You know, we're kind of spacey that way. I mean, we're not doing it for the business end of it because we need the money. And also, it's a good place for other photographers or other writers or painters or whatever to see their work done as people that we believe in. It's like we start working on it that day. We always get together. It's Nan, Nathan Kilser, and myself who really sit down over coffee and just talk about like what interests us right now, you know.
So it's you three brainstorming about the stuff that's interesting out there. It's not doesn't have to be American, or it does have to
No, it doesn't. I'm always arguing with them, too, because we're doing something with David now.
Bailey.
Yeah. And, David's not American, but he loves America. I mean, I don't even know if he loves America, He's so ornery, you know what I mean? But, we just pick. I was just kind of interested because, isn't it interesting, and it must be for you, too, you come across a lot of different kinds of people. And if you love your work and you're strong about it, people think you have an easy life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And we don't always have an easy life.
No, not at all.
No one has an easy life.
Nobody, And so I kind of wanted to show a little bit of David's family in these pictures, And they're pictures that he's done,
Is this in your next issue?
Yeah.
And what's that one going to be called? What's the next issue called?
We don't have a name for it until it's like the last minute.
I love your titles. There was one about towering
feeling.
Yeah, towering feeling, which was your description of how you feel when you're contemplating the immensity of the universe, or the immutability and inscrutability.
Right. And it's funny because it's words that are from a Rodgers and Hammerstein song. I used to listen to musicals all the time. At the beginning of the rock and roll thing, I was listening to American musicals. How
do you remember these things that appeal to you? Do you have a little book that you jot things down in, or just keep it up in your brain?
Yeah, keep it up in my brain, Maybe it's making me a little bit schizophrenic. I don't know.
It's genius. Where does one buy All American? How do we find it?
It sells at bookstores, more like art bookstores and things like that, At first, we don't really make very many copies, and then we did, made a little more. I'm always laughing at some photographers who want to make like 50,000 copies of a book, I don't really want my books to be ever that,
Some people say that you just sort of define the American zeitgeist in the eras of the 80s and the 90s. What is the American spirit? What is all American?
Well, it's weird because I think the American spirit is in this poem that I wanted to let you know about. It's by Charles Bukowski.
No, tell me.
Called The Laughing Heart.
Will you read it to me?
You want me to read it to you?
Yes, please.
Oh, no, wow. I'm not as good as the guy who reads it, besides Mr. Bukowski. He's pretty great. Anyway, and the person I'm talking about is Tom Waits, and it was one of the things that I started working on this exhibition about,
Tom Waits.
So, yeah. About
Tom Waits.
Yeah. He used to work with my sister, and I photographed him, and I was just starting out, and I went down to 42nd Street to all the strip joints with him. And these great signs and the girls and the type and everything on the windows. And he said to me in that voice, he goes, "You're ruining my reputation." Anyway, do you really want me to read this?
Yes, please.
The poem is called The Laughing Heart by Charles Bukowski. And it was read by Tom Waits. And that's how I discovered it. Your life is your life. Don't let it be clubbed into a dank submission. Be on the watch. There are ways out. There is a light somewhere. It may not be much light, but it beats the darkness. Be on the watch. The gods will offer you chances. Know them. Take them. You can't beat death, but you can beat death in life. Sometimes the more often you learn to do it, the more light there will be. Your life is your life. Know it while you have it. You are marvelous. The gods wait to delight in you.
I must say, Bruce Weber, you are marvelous and the gods delight in you. Thank you so much for coming and talking to me today.
Right.
Love that poem. If you've enjoyed today's show, you can hear more episodes in the series by clicking follow wherever you're listening to this, or by searching for The Third Act on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. And if you think your friends would love to listen, please do tell them about us. This episode was produced by Pete Norton and made possible by Auriens. luxurious residences that are redefining later living in the heart of Chelsea. I'm Catherine Fairweather, and we'll be back in a fortnight for another episode of the third act.